What's up, guys? Thanks for stopping by and checking out another diesel heater video. I'm Dustin and welcome back to the channel, Adam Off-Road. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the top modifications that I like to do to my Chinese diesel heaters. I've had a few in the past and I've learned a lot over the years, and in today's video, it's going to be geared towards everything I've really learned about these heaters and those modifications. So let's get to it. Now you're probably asking yourself, why do we need to set up these diesel heaters when they should be ready to go right out of the box? Now these diesel heaters in particular are made to be used inside the heated space while the exhaust is piped to the outside. But for us tent campers, we use our heaters outside the heated space and pipe hot air into our tents. So with that, there's going to be some modifications necessary, and these mods are going to be for all types of diesel heaters, but we'll get to that later on in this video. I advise that all new diesel heater owners get familiar with their heaters, setting it up, taking it apart, making adjustments, and modifying the heater to your needs are all steps taken to make sure that you have the best experience with your heater. It's also a good time to run your heater for several hours. That way you can burn off any harmful toxins that could be left over by the manufacturing process. Now this is the time you're going to want to decide what fuel you're going to use, and there's going to be two types of fuels. We have diesel and kerosene. Diesel fuel costs more and begins gelling around 32 degrees. Around 5 to 10 degrees, it will start causing problems and begin to slow the flow. You may need some kind of additive for that. There's also kerosene. If it's readily available, it can be much cheaper to use, and the jelly point for that is -40. This is important to understand as we like to keep our heaters outside. So the fuel tanks are going to be outside in the elements, and depending on where you take your heater, this could present a big problem. I personally never had any issues with diesel, so there may already be some kind of additive at the pump, hence how it can even pump out of the pump. Behind me, I'll be setting up for heating two tents. I'm going to begin by starting the heater up using my Bluetooth app on this phone. It's a new feature that's in this heater. Coupled with that and the new altitude mode, it allows the heater to automatically adjust the heat output to a set point you like, and it takes the guesswork and the need for the thermostatic control. It just takes all the guesswork out of it, automatically does all the sets for you. And on the upper right hand screen, I'll display the amp draw during the startup and the run process, while I'll be showing you some of the modifications I think will enhance your tent camping experience. So for the first mod, we'll start at the battery power supply cable. In the last video, I put this together real quick. It does the job, but there's definitely room for improvement here. So I'm going to share with you a new cable that I'll introduce. It's a little bit heavier duty, and you do want to be careful when you choose these cigarette lighter socket adapters. This is a 14 gauge cigarette lighter socket. It is rated up to 20 amps. It also has some spare fuses. So to build the cable, all I had to do was cut the wires and strip them back on both sides of the new cable and the one that comes with the heater. And then I used the solder sticks to splice those together. I use a technique called Western Union splice. It's really fast, quick, and very strong type of splice. And then I just covered it with some heat shrink to make it look like a cable, and that's it. Pretty solid cable, and it's 4 foot in length, and it will supply all the power we need for the heater when used with a battery. So whenever you build a cable like this, you want to check the polarity of the cable all the way up into the connections of the circuitry for the heater. So in my case, I'm just using my multimeter here. This is going to be the ground connection, and this is going to be the positive. We don't have any shorts. And then I'm going to find the ground over here. So on the right side, the right blade is ground, and the left is positive. Just a quick check to make sure your polarity is correct. Now for the next mod, as you can see, I've got the heater and the gas tank out of the enclosure. That's because it's going to be a lot easier to work on doing these next few modifications. This over here is the connector for the fuel pump. This is the main connector for the motherboard. This is the power supply connections, and this is the controller connection. For this next modification, I'll be installing a 15 amp fuse in line to the power circuit of the red wire right here. So I'm just going to cut this and splice this in. Now on these solder sticks, there's a large opening and a small opening. I like to do the small opening first. That way when I make the splice, I can just slip it right over. This technique is super strong and it's an easy way to splice wires together. So there you have it, quick and easy inline fuse into the power source for the heater. Now the big benefit to having the fuse on the inside of the enclosure rather than the outside is now that you have protection for both the AC 120 volt power adapter and the battery connection cables. Now these next few modifications are going to be totally optional. Just like all of them, these are going to be my solution to attempt to solve a problem, and that's going to be trying to quiet down the fuel pump. So I found this stuff called sound dampening material. It's basically foam with sticky back, and I'm just going to wrap the fuel pump a few times with some of this material. And I'll just go ahead and add a zip tie around here. That way it helps hold the foam material on. So there's the finished product. It's just my attempt to solve a problem that I hear about a lot with these fuel pumps, them just being noisy. I don't even really know if it's going to even dampen the noise of the fuel pump, which really hasn't been a problem for me in the past. But I figured I would do it anyways because I do plan on taking this into some serious cold weather, and it may help insulate the pump and some of the fuel that's going through it. Now on this heater, the fuel line from the tank to the pump is some pretty quality fuel line. You can see the braids in the material, and it's not just, you know, a rubber tube. It's got some actual braiding inside. You can definitely see it on the outside. I'm going to be cutting this down pretty much in half so we can install this fuel filter. So that's what I have for the fuel filter. I just put some zip ties on the barb fittings. You want to make sure your fuel's going the right direction. There's an arrow pointed that way. The fuel filter did come with some clamps, but I think the tubing is too heavy for the clamps to go around it. Now do keep in mind that if you add a fuel filter to this model, because the tank is so close to the heater, there's not much line there between the pump and the tank, and that if you do add a filter, remove about the same length as the filter and tube. That way you can help reduce or eliminate any kinking after everything is assembled. The last thing I'm going to do is add some of this heat shrink. There are some metal parts that this tubing can rub on, and I don't want it to fray a hole or cause a leak in transit. So I'm going to add this thick piece of heat shrink around the end of the tube. That way it will kind of help protect it and insulate it from those sharp pieces of metal. So that's going to be it for the fuel pump and the fuel lines. I'm almost done with the modifications. I got a few more left. Let's go ahead and start putting this thing together. Alright, so at the moment we are running the heater. As you can see, we're idling at about 0.8, 0.7 amps, very low setting, and it's maintaining the temperature roughly 90 degrees, 95 degrees. It's a little bit warm out today and it's evening time, so the temperature is starting to fall. The next mod I wanted to share with you with this diesel heater, which I've also done to my older Viver heater. Early on, we figured out that the controller's cabling needs to be extended about 8 to 10 feet. That way the controller can be inside the heated space, your tent, because the thermostat is built into this. Now on this, it's a must do for these heaters. With the new control, you don't really need to do it, but you never know if your Bluetooth app crashes or your phone dies and you need heat, and you don't want to be ran out of your tent and you want the heater to work properly for tent use. It's always a good idea just to have that backup and security. So what I went and did is cut the cable and spliced in a 3-wire cable with the heat shrink. Same as way we built the power supply cable. I just spliced a new cable. It's a 3-wire 20 gauge cable and it's 10 feet long. I'll leave a link in the description box if you're interested, but it essentially allows me to have the controller in the tent. This is my carbon monoxide detector. It illuminates as well. It's saying 96 degrees. This is the other end of the cable. You can see all I had to do was clip this end off and splice it to the other end of the new cable, and then essentially if the controller goes bad, I can just plug in a new controller. So that's very nice about that. So as you can see, I have the set speed at a very low set speed, the lowest it can go, because the tent is already heated up. Everything's warm inside, and I can get this heater super efficient on fuel and power consumption and just maintain that heat setting for the remainder of the night. Usually I'll run this at night. Sometimes I'll run it during the day, but mainly at night, or if my tent's wet and I'm at home, I need to dry it out. This will definitely help dry out your tent. But yeah, I really like this mode because you don't need the controller in the tent, but I like to have it just in case, you know, like I said, the phone may die, the app could crash, things like that. So it's just a peace of mind, and it's not that hard just to throw it up into the tent after extending the cable. So we're gonna go back and show you to the next mod. So the next mod I wanted to talk about is the setup for 2 tents. I'm using one heater very efficiently to heat 2 tents, and I've got some ducting going up to each tent using my Y splitter here. You don't need any tools or anything extra. They're all wing nut clamps, so they can all be tightened by hand. I really like that. As far as a feature when setting this up, you don't really need to go look for tools or things like that, as well as the winged clamp for the exhaust. You saw that earlier on in the video when I set this all up. This is my little diesel heater box. I keep all my ducting, the splitter, all the clamps, and additional items I'll keep in here, remotes and things like that as a backup. So I can heat 2 temps super comfortably with one heater, and man, it is super nice to be able to do that, especially if, you know, your buddy wants to go camping but he doesn't have a heater. You got him covered. So the last couple of modifications here I wanted to share with you was I added this chain to hold up the top of the box. All I had to do was drill some small holes here and here. I had some extra hardware laying around in the toolbox, and I bolted the chain to the top of the lid and the side here, and man, it beats having it fall over to the back, possibly getting burned from your exhaust. You can see here the controller cable goes through this hole here, so all of my 10-foot cable will store right here with the power cables all in the toolbox, and on the other side I'll still have a spot to store the controller when I go to put this thing away. Now the last thing I want to talk about is the battery that I'm using to power on the heater. This is a 100 amp hour, roughly 1280 watt hour battery. It's got a lot of power, and for 250 bucks, this thing, I can get 3 nights easily with this heater. I'm pretty sure I can get about 3 8-hour nights on one 6-liter tank. So I'm running pretty efficiently. I can get up to about 3 days on this setup without needing to recharge the battery or refuel. So I've got some feedback from Hcalory recently. I guess you guys bought all the heaters. They're out of stock right now for the month of November. They're going to be building quite a few coming soon, and in December we should have some new stock. So if you guys are interested in the Hcalory heater, I'll leave a link in the description box below, but don't expect this heater to come back onto Amazon until at least December. So before I let you go, I did want to give you guys some perspective on how many amps these things require. This will help you decide what size battery you need for the length of time you're going to be using your heaters out on your adventures. So at the beginning of the video, I recorded up on the left or right hand screen the full load amps, and I recorded somewhere around 9.87 at full load for this heater. Now do keep in mind that may vary based on the ambience. The colder it is outside, the more heat or power you're going to need to heat up this heater. Now once your tent is heated up, you're going to want that heater to throttle way down so it's more efficient at that time. And during the majority of the runtime, I was idling somewhere around 8.87 amps, 0.84, just under an amp. So that's really good for long term. And then at shutdown, we did increase the amps a little bit just to burn off any unburnt fuels, things like that. And then once the glow plug and all that turned off, the pump, we were down to about 0.3 amps. And that's just the fan in the back rejecting all of the heat. So with that data, I hope that would help you guys in determining what size battery you need and how much fuel you'll need for your adventures. So with that, we're gonna end the video here, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun setting everything up and sharing with you all the different mods and things that I've learned throughout the years. If you are interested in any products in this video, I'll leave all of that in the description box below. Go ahead and leave your comments and I'll try to do my best to get to those in the comment box below. And we'll see you guys out in camping on the trail. Have a good day. We'll see you soon.